See, to be honest, going self-employed has not helped us.
Yeah.
Like, at all. And COVID didn't help it.
Yeah,
we got to 100 episodes pretty, weekly.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of... it's like Matt's career, my career, other things have just took the front seat.
Yeah.
But definitely, this has been the most consistent the last sort of month.
Back in the swing of it, and got some ideas for other stuff. But it's always like, you got in touch and I'm just like, this is like pretty much perfect for what we do. So it's nice to have you in. We're talking to Neil Cowan for Jags for Good. Sorry, I think I meant Thistle for Good there. How's it going, man?
Very good, yeah. Good, how are you?
Not bad, mate. It's nice to meet you.
I think this must be the first sibling. Done.
Yeah.
Had your sister Anna on.
Yeah, I think she set the bar.
She
did. In her shadow.
We were talking about that half mic, weren't we, before we come on? Like, she was so impressive, even at such a young age, and some of the campaigning stuff that she's done.
Yeah, I mean, she's 10, 11 years younger than me, but definitely in her shadow in lots of ways.
Yeah,
she's
we touched on the abortion sort of buffer zones and stuff like that, and it seems to have come to real prominence in the last few weeks with other events, but best of luck to her on that one.
For sure.
So let's shift it to yourselves. Jags for Good. What's the basic gist that people need to know?
Yeah, so we're an independent fan-led initiative, so aimed at sort of mobilising Partick Thistle fans in the name of social justice issues in Maryhill and also kind of across Glasgow. So kind of set up with the idea, so there's a group of kind of like-minded Jags fans involved, but the idea that, we have like 2.5, maybe if we're being optimistic, 3,000 Thistle fans there that have this sort of shared identity of being a Thistle fan, maybe shared values as well. And it was an opportunity, particularly given the kind of, the cost of living crisis, growing levels of hardship, poverty in Maryhill and across Glasgow and across the rest of the country. It was an opportunity to kind of tap into and harness that shared sense of being a Thistle fan, of shared identity, to do some good stuff. So we launched about a month ago, and we launched our season ticket fundraiser. So we're asking Thistle fans and whoever else to chip in cash to buy season tickets for local charities to work with folk who might kind of otherwise be prevented from going to Firhill or going to the football. So we've raised like $7,000 so far from fans. The club have pledged to match every penny that we raise. That's about $14,000 worth of season tickets.
Wow.
To sort of share the misery of being a Jags fan with people. And we also, a couple of home games ago, did a food bank donation drive for Glasgow North West Food Bank. Got like half a ton of food, over $1,000 in cash, again to support Glasgow North West Food Bank's work. So that's kind of what we've done so far. But the aim really is just to mobilise Jags fans in the name of social justice issues locally in Maryhill and across Glasgow as well.
Love it. Like, we've always had the guys for sort of Glasgow St Pauli in as well. Like, this is definitely something that I love seeing, because obviously, no secret that we're both Celtic fans. Charity is a big part of the history of the club that we like have a huge sense of pride in and stuff like that. And I love also when the clubs in their communities take that sort of stance to actually like make their communities better, and like this just ticks all the boxes. So like, fair play on that respect. When I was looking through, I seen the season ticket tweet the day, which will obviously get a wee retweet out and try and sort of spread the word there. But looks as though he's had like a pretty decent start, because you're saying you were a month in. Did I see somewhere like at the end of the first week or so you'd raised like, what was it, like $5,000 or $6,000 or something?
Yeah. So we had like immediately folks seemed to kind of latch onto it. I guess it's maybe because there's so much awareness of kind of cost of living crisis at the minute, and sort of growing numbers of people that are really kind of struggling to get by. Folk really latched onto it. We had really good support early doors from like the club sponsors, Just Employment Law. They gave us $1,000 like in the first day.
Wow.
The team themselves, the men's team, gave us best part of $1,000. The women's team gave us a really substantial donation as well. So folk really seemed to buy into it really early on, which is brilliant. Because we weren't sure quite how it would land. People would just think we were kind of a bunch of do-gooders, like just being daft with like daft graphics online and stuff. But nah, it's been like brilliant so far, and the club have been supportive, the players have been supportive, and the fans have really kind of got behind it. So it's been been class.
Like the actual club's mobilised behind it at pretty much every level there.
Yeah, and I guess we're keen to make sure people know that it's just it's the fans that are driving this. We're all fans, totally independent from the club. But in saying that, the club have been supportive, and as I say, they've pledged to match every penny we raise for season tickets, so we'll get to double the number of season tickets that we can actually buy for folk who might not otherwise get to come along to the football. So the club have been really good with it. So.
You said $14,000. How many season tickets is that going to buy?
I'm not actually sure. It depends on how the club haven't confirmed the prices for next year yet, so probably about 50, 60, something like that. But we'll maybe try and cut a deal with the club as well, so we can maybe get a few more, hopefully. But we're so 14 grand at the minute, but planning to kind of keep on going through the summer to get as much as possible. The club have pledged to match every penny we raise, but we haven't set an upper limit on it, so I don't know if they realise that. But so we're just going to keep it going.
We've not got a time watch. We're not going to stop watching this or an upper limit.
So we might rob the club of buying a decent striker next year. That'll
make us popular.
I know. But no, it's been great so far. The support's been really, really good, and also fans of other clubs. I've had fans from different clubs getting in touch, saying that they want to do similar things, and there's already similar groups kind of across the UK, particularly in England, who are doing similar stuff. So it's not like a new concept, but
I think one of the other clubs that, in Scotland particularly, that I think has been really great for like their community engagement, Motherwell. I think they did something similar with the season book. Sort of buyback recently. I don't know if they're doing it again this year, but I know it did happen at some point.
I think Motherwell as a whole for a good few years have been brilliant in doing stuff like this. That's from the club as well, but I think the fans have really got behind it. So they're like a total model of I think what clubs should try and do.
Excellent. I mean, it is essentially using the club as a gateway. You know what I mean? Those people that, as you say, maybe aren't in a position to get to the games. Like, you know, I've been into the games for 10, 15, 20 years. Don't go anywhere. I'm more prone to like the juniors now. But like, I know what it is to look forward to that, to go and seeing your team, to actually like feeling the atmosphere, you know, your team gets a result. Like, people almost look down their nose at that experience to a certain extent, but like the difference that can actually make when other things are rough is like significant in people's lives. And I think when you're going to maybe use, you know, the club as a gateway, like guys like Motherwell, to suicide prevention and, you know, food banks and all these other things, like it can only be a good thing.
Definitely. Like the thing about, I mean, football's just such an important part of, certainly of my life and so many people's lives. Like, it's, for me, I think for a lot of people, it's the kind of going to football on a Saturday is like the kind of anchor of your week. So you know that like whatever's happening, stresses, whatever, on Saturday you're going, I was going to say you can forget about your stresses, but when you're a Thistle fan, you kind of just, you know, give them more stress.
Spells when you as a Celtic fan, you couldn't forget your stresses either.
Yeah, but no, it's a massive important thing, and it becomes a massive part of your identity as well as a person.
Yeah.
But it is really expensive to go to the football. Like even, you know, Thistle, it's 20 quid, you know, for home games, or season tickets are obviously more expensive. So there is a massive financial barrier for folk who are maybe on low incomes or who are struggling to get by or whatever. Absolutely. So it's hugely important. So one of the charities, or the sort of principal charity we've been trying to raise money for to buy season tickets, is a charity called Maryhill Integration Network. Okay. And they do loads of work with particularly refugees, asylum seekers and migrants in sort of Maryhill and the surrounding area.
Excellent.
And in their men's group, loads of the guys there are refugees, love football, but are often quite social isolated, and also they're often in asylum support, which is like absolutely minimal, so wouldn't otherwise be able to get to the football. So we'll be able to now buy them a bunch of season tickets so they actually come on to the football on a Saturday, and that can, I guess, be part of their week.
It integrates them in the community and on the homes and stuff like that as well. Like, that's awesome.
How much part of Thistle's histories, like obviously Matt was mentioning earlier, like I think as Celtic supporters, we're very proud of the sort of historical charitable contributions that the club has made. And obviously there's a Celtic FC Foundation, and even like the Ultras groups do like food bank drives and stuff like that. But is this a historical thing with Partick Thistle? Has it always been like a sort of charitable club and then the community as well?
Well, I suppose just morally Thistle are superior to everyone else anyway, so I'd say yes. But I mean, Thistle have like a charitable trust that do brilliant work in Maryhill and in northwest of Glasgow, so that's a part of the club. I mean, I guess a large part of supporting Thistle is about as well being a bit different and sort of differentiating yourself from Rangers and Celtic and all that kind of thing as well. So
it's not Peters Hill.
Yes, they've taken over Peters Hill.
I was up there recently watching St Rock's actually, and it's like lovely complex. So couldn't work out why I was sitting looking at a young lad in like full kit Thistle gear at like a juniors game that had nothing to do with Thistle, and then somebody's like, no, I'm pretty sure I think Thistle at least part own this with like Glasgow club or whatever.
Yeah, I think Charitable Trust have taken over like community ownership of it. But I suppose it's maybe not a part of our history in the way that Celtic, you know, the way Celtic were established and all that. But certainly the club themselves do, or the Charitable Trust do brilliant work now. And as I say, we just, you know, we're morally superior Thistle fans anyway. So
I know we joked about it, the thing when you did touch on it, like the sort of zany or sort of fun graphics and stuff that you've been using. Like, they've been pretty cool on it, and I I did have to like stop myself responding to defund Celtic and Rangers.
Yeah, we tried not to use the phrase. We tried not to use the phrase Old Firm because that can be a bit controversial.
Aye,
but yeah,
that's when I knew you were probably joking, because if they'd thrown Old Firm in there, they were definitely looking for a reaction.
Yeah, no, we've basically been putting out lots of kind of nonsense graphics on Twitter and Facebook. Kind of most of them like well-known political slogans, but putting a wee Jags twist on them. So like, liberté, égalité, solidarity, John Lambay, which people seem to enjoy, or like
seen that one as well.
There's power in a thistle, stuff like that. Just to kind of get a bit of attention on what we're trying to do and to drive people towards the fundraising page. We had one of like Ian McCall as Che Guevara, or Ian McCall as like Don Corleone as well. So just nonsense like that. Just to try and get a bit of attention to the fundraiser, cool. And sold some t-shirts with those kind of slogans on them and stuff, which Jags fans seem to be into. So the defund Rangers and Celtic. I was kind of wanting a backlash for that, but it was just like nobody really gave us a backlash. People just found it quite funny, so that was a shame.
Well, I mean, hopefully that can only like help with the fundraising. There's no ill will towards this for either side of the ugly sisters, as they're called outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
how much, like you personally, do you feel that football kind of needs to return to like the community? Because when we had the Glasgow St. Pauli guys in, I think that both me and Matt were kind of like, I don't know, that was like the start of kind of feeling at the time kind of disillusioned with like with Celtic, like it's a business, isn't it? And football teams started to help communities and to be part, give people a place to go. And I think for me, the majority of top flight football's kind of lost that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends the level of football you're watching. So like for me, supporting a club the size of Rangers or Celtic, I would just be bored. Like I would be really bored. Similarly, like the English Premiership, I used to watch Match of the Day every week when I was wee. Like I couldn't tell you what's happening in the Premiership. I just don't care. I just don't care. Yep. Like so much money, so much of it. So many club owners that are human rights abusers and all that. It's just it's kind of soiled for me. Whereas I think clubs at Thistle's level and below, there is more of a grounding in community. I think, or there's more of a sense of, I don't know, place or community or something.
Definitely.
So I think it is different, but I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, clubs are located in communities in which people's lives are often not very good. So Thistle are located in Maryhill, where there's like 1 in I think 3 children living in poverty. I think as a club and as a set of fans, you have to kind of respond to that, which is partly what this is about. But yeah, I think to your question, I suppose it depends on the level of football you're watching. To me, that kind of sense of clubs being rooted in community is still apparent in a lot of clubs in Scotland, particularly Championship and below, and then down to juniors as well.
I think it probably is something that is a uniquely like Glasgow problem, in the sense that it's maybe only Celtic and Rangers that have to like deal with that thought process, because like I've dipped in and out of Celtic over the years, or let's say 15 years. I went for 5, stopped for 2, went back, and a lot of the times when I stopped, it was that disillusionment. Like just before Ronnie Dyler came in, I was just like, you're just like, here's your money, shut up and put up it. And then they went through things like the Celtic Way and Rodgers, and there was Mary a thing, and I went back, and then again, see, by the end of it, I'd waited 15 years for treble. I seen 3 in a row, and I was bored. Yeah, so I was just like, this isn't it for me anymore. I got to the Scottish Cup final to see the 9th of the 9 trophies getting lifted, and was wanting to give my ticket away. I was done.
This is what I always think about.
I go to St Rock's, and like that Blood and Thunder football with links to local refuge, it is all there. You know what I mean? Like,
and in terms of the football though, like what you're saying, like I always think this about in terms of being a Rangers Celtic fan, it must just be boring, because if you draw, it's a crisis. Like if you lose, it's like an existential crisis. If you lose the league, it's like Armageddon. Like that must just be, to me, really boring. Like, I mean, I don't enjoy Thistle losing, but the years of misery that we often have mean that the one solitary once in a decade year of success we have is just completely joyful and amazing, and like some of the best memories you'll ever have. So I would find being a Rangers Celtic fan incredibly dull.
I think it was maybe a later thing for me, just because I'd seen and basically done it all at that point, multiple times there. And I think one of the things when we talk about like cost of living in relation to football, and why it's kind of so important that we are engaging with clubs to try and make tickets available to people who maybe otherwise wouldn't be, is that it's not just about the price of your ticket. So see, when you're an your team, it's the jersey, it's the away, it's scarves, it's travel to games, travel back for games, like pies at half time. If you're fortunate enough to be able to go and stop somewhere for a couple of jars and catch up with mates on the way, it's your first goal scorer bet. And these are not all big things, but like over the course of the year, it takes the price that you're paying to get into the match and maybe trebles or quadruples it for really like basic things that you would probably need anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
it's an expensive thing. Like I wouldn't dare tot up like how much I spend following Thistle every year.
I dread to think about it, what I spent over the years.
In terms of like, you know, value for money, we're probably not talking about the best value, but I just pay it anyway because it's what I do on a Saturday. But it's an expensive thing, and you know, particularly at the moment, the kind of economic hardship that a lot of people are experiencing, a lot of folk will just be and are just locked out of going to football, and that's for something that's, you know, our national sport and that's so important to a lot of people. I think that's a real pity. So that's what we're trying to change in a very small way.
So being for Glasgow, how did you know end up a Celtic or Rangers fan?
Just through my dad. So my dad wasn't actually a Thistle fan. He's from Ayrshire, but he moved to Glasgow for uni and stuff. He was a large Thistle fan. That was his team when he was growing up. And then when myself and my older sister were born, I showed a big interest in football from a very early age, and Thistle were a local team, so it was as simple as that. Also didn't want to take me to Rangers Celtic just because of the stuff that goes along with that. So went to my first game at 3, kind of hooked instantly. And then from the age of like 5, we went just home and away every single week. Became obsessed with our players at the time, like Albert Craig, Jerry Britton, Roddy Grant, Chick Charnley, obviously. Just like obsessed with them. And then
we grew up with somebody who she ended up married to one of the Thistle players from back in the day. I can't remember now.
Yeah,
it'll come to me like 10 minutes after you walk out the door. So well, it wasn't Jerry Britton, but it was like in that neck of the woods, and he was a striker, but it's gone. Yeah,
well, to me, those guys were like when I was like 5, just like, you know, Messi and Ronaldo. They were that kind of level to me. So just through that really, and then like apart from like years I've not been living in Glasgow, it's been like every game pretty much, home and away.
That's awesome.
Aye, that's fair enough. Aye, I was going to ask a similar question because I'm always quite interested in sort of like people, you know, like that pick the underdog.
Yeah.
And why they pick the underdog. I think other than I got into Celtic because of my dad, and he was even reluctant to take me to Celtic Park.
My dad took me to one friendly and never bought me a Celtic tap. I did all that as an adult, you know what I mean? But my dad's last game as a Celtic fan was the 80 Cup final, and then obviously we all know what happened there, and he was just like, nah, I'm done with it.
It was a similar sort of thing for, I think, more financial for my dad, but he didn't want me to go because of, like you're saying, the implications of being a Celtic fan, and what the dangers that could arise by walking about with a Celtic top. But who's Thistle's like greatest rivals? Who would be the?
I mean, we like to think it was Celtic Rangers, but obviously, you know, it's not.
Not everybody's feelings here, but
not a recent history, but I think, but you know, for
to be fair, I regularly
back, you were first division pretty regularly. Sure.
We have been. I mean, like Airdrie and Clyde over the years have been rivals. Like Thistle and Airdrie used to be a big rivalry. They used to have like Section B, like their hooligans who were kind of like I remember as a kid going along to Thistle Airdrie games, and their Section B guys were giving it like Nazi salutes and all that sort of stuff. We played them in the cup this year actually, and the atmosphere was pretty good. They had like a Donald Trump flag saying "Make Airdrie Great Again," all that sort of stuff. So that be elevated still
I've
there.
seen a bit of that before.
Clyde as well. They hate us more than we hate them. They're like the Thistle to our old Rangers or Celtic. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's probably them, depending on where they are in the league and all that kind of thing.
Aye, absolutely. And what's sort of the makeup of yourself sort of wanting to be into activism and stuff like that? Like, where does that come from, the motivation for that?
So my background's in campaigning, so I work for an anti-poverty charity, so that's what I do. So I do like policy and campaigns for an anti-poverty charity, so that's kind of my background anyway. And I've always worked in the charity sector doing like policy campaigns, lobbying and stuff. So this, I suppose, is a way of marrying that with Thistle, and similarly the other people involved as well in Jags for Good all have, I guess, kind of related backgrounds in whatever ways, whether it's campaigning or third sector or whatever. But all have a love for Thistle as well, so kind of saw the value in doing this.
And what made you get into campaigning in the first place? Like, what's the?
I guess I grew up in a kind of politically minded environment.
We've already had Anna, and it sounds as though they're quite a politically minded family with the same things.
Yeah, well, like I think told folk this recently, but like genuinely my earliest memory, this is before Anna was born, but my earliest memory is when I was about 3, and it was Guy Fawkes night, and my dad had a bonfire out the back garden and burnt Maggie Thatcher. So like, if that's your earliest memory, do you know what I mean? You don't have much chance in terms of being political or not. You're kind of it's kind of going to happen. So just got into like studied politics uni and all that. So I was pretty political and got into the sort of job that I do through that, really.
I just did a check there, by the way. She's still dead, so it's all good.
I know, that's literally the only... No, I'm not even going to go there. I was going to say... No, because if I say stuff and then tell you to cut it out and you don't cut it out, so we'll move on.
So who are the people that are going to get these season tickets? Like, and if there's people, how do they even go about? Like, if somebody wanted to get to try and get one.
So the charity we've been I guess fundraising for initially are Maryhill Integration Network. So they're based in Maryhill, do loads of work in terms of like bringing communities together, but particularly supporting, as I said, like refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants that are maybe new to Maryhill or to life in Glasgow. And particularly their men's group, who are mostly guys who are kind of on their own, new to Glasgow. And they get together quite regularly to kind of, I guess, support each other and to help each other kind of integrate into Glasgow and stuff. So they're getting the first batch of them. But we got in touch with the charity directly and said, like, would this be something you were interested in? Because that was the other thing. We were kind of like, if we're doing all this fundraising, actually, folk might be like, why the fuck do I go for Hill? And, you know, like, why would I actually... would no interest us? But thankfully they said, yeah, we'd love them. So they're the first group of people.
That is something I honestly would not have even thought about up front, and it's probably like an important sort of step in the journey. Is like, do you actually want to come and watch these games?
That's the thing. It's like, you know, for folks that are probably have been through a lot of trauma, probably really struggling in the city, like, do we want to add to the trauma by bringing them onto Firhill? Was my question. But they were into it. So just been contacting local charities and saying, is this something that the folks that you work with would actually be up for?
I think the especially like asylum seekers, like I say, people that, you know, maybe came here like looking for, you know, coming out of war zones and stuff, they'll love taking their kids to something, you know, that's kind of... I mean, I went to see Partick Thistle when I was a wee boy. Like, we had a season ticket at Celtic Park. Maybe, what season would this be? 95, 96. And it just so happened that all the sort of Thistle, or the majority of the Thistle home games, were the opposite of the Celtic home games, and somebody chapped the door, like canvassing to sell. And I think kids were going for free in the 90s or something like that. And it was like, it did kind of, I remember sort of thinking it felt safer than Celtic Park. Like,
no doubt.
Not as big, more of a sort of nicer atmosphere.
More space, more empty seats.
See, to be honest, I think it was really busy, if I remember rightly. Like, I think Thistle were in the Premier League at the time. That time, and it was quite busy when we were going, but it felt like the way that the Scottish Cup Saturdays did at Celtic Park, where it was, I think what was missing was the pressure to win.
Yeah.
See, like that sort of nasty atmosphere that happens if Celtic go 1-0 down, or if it's 0-0, it's 65 minutes, and guys run about you know, like if it's 96, I'm like fucking 12, or going fucking this and get fucking, you're just sort of like, whoa, you know, like what there was none of that. It just sort of felt really relaxed. Felt like I hate the sort of bit like a family atmosphere.
Yeah, really we could probably do with a little bit more pressure to win, to be honest. We could probably do a bit of that, but it is a different atmosphere. Like when I go to, if you go to like Celtic Park and Ibrox, particularly Ibrox, to be honest, as an away fan, there is definitely particularly Ibrox, there is a bit of poison to the atmosphere, which is pretty unpleasant. Whereas you don't really get that at Firhill. That's not to say people are extremely passionate and shout abuse and all the rest of it as you do at football. But
there was a wee viral video in the last week or so, was there no, that probably proves there was a bit of shouting and bawling at the Thistle games.
Yeah, Richard Foster.
I think that's who it was.
Pretty poor that,
I never. What happened to you?
There was like a back and forth with fans or something like that. But it was one of the ones I scrolled through and somebody was like, "Oh, kicking off at the Thistle game," and I never watched it. It was just like,
it's one of our players was getting a bit of abuse at half time and basically tried to come into the crowd to fight the fan. And got put. I think there was a couple of things that were said that probably weren't very good. But it's a different type of atmosphere for sure. It's less poison.
That was it there, because my feed is now spammed up with everything Partick Thistle since we started following it. The algorithm has literally seen me looking at the Jags for good stuff, and it's just spammed up my personal feed with like Partick Thistle everything. So it has. So that's why that happened. But
absolutely. Like, I think that we might be potentially seeing something. If you look at what's happening with like Russia, the way that they've sort of sanctioned Russian money getting into football. If something like that happens, I'm thinking that there might be a more of a community or like fan-owned thing that comes into football in the very near future. Now I know that everybody's been talking about like the Premier League bubble busting and
actually getting rid of all these like psychopaths and dictators that are running football clubs. You mean?
Is Partick Thistle fan-owned in any way?
So we're supposed to be, but we're not yet. So do you remember Colin Weir that won Euro Millions? So he basically bought the club with the stated intention of passing it on to the fans, and he appointed a chairperson who's going to be running the club. Then he died, and the whole idea was that there was supposed to be a process through which the club would be given to the fans. About a month ago, the club announced that that's not going to happen because they don't trust the fans group that have been set up to run the club. So it's basically a bit of a controversy at the minute around that. So I guess short answer is we should be fan owned, but we're not at the moment because the club have put lots of barriers in place, which is a real shame.
Right.
Thistle were perfectly set up to be fan owned, I think. Even the way that loads of folk have got behind like what we were doing, which is not to do with fan ownership at all, but folk have got behind it, shows that fans can be mobilised, fans can respond to,
definitely
that kind of thing. So I think fan ownership is definitely certainly for clubs of Thistle size, absolutely the way forward. And it's a shame that that's not happened yet, but hopefully it will.
Yeah,
it's a long
something
answer.
I'd love to see a lot more, even like like membership sort of models that you sometimes see in places like Portugal ahead of like season books, where you pay a certain amount, so you're instead of paying £500 for your season book, you pay £250 for your club membership and £250 for your games. But every year you keep that membership, your voting rights increase. So the more you stay loyal to the club, the more impact your voice has when things like this, kind of happen and all the rest of it. But again, that's miles off, I think, in terms of Scottish football. But there's loads of models I'd love to see come in, because that, in the last year for us, like, just fans were just like horn on the face and just pushed to one side. They were like, we don't give a fuck what you've got to say. And you're just like, it can't continue on like that. I don't think anywhere.
And I think when you look at some of most of the English Premiership clubs are now owned by people probably with fairly sketchy business or political backgrounds. And
I think that's probably been generous.
Yeah. For me, like, if you're a Man City fan, you probably enjoyed the success, but also you're owned by, a group of folk who, pretty, ethically and morally very
we
vegetable.
spoke about this, didn't we? That
the Newcastle takeover.
Exactly.
When the Newcastle thing happened, we did an episode. Sometimes we do an episode, just me and Matt, we just sit and talk about like the last 2 weeks' recent events. And I was like, I don't know if we would see Celtic fans out climbing lampposts and in the street celebrating if what is essentially, religious fundamentalists and dictatorships were buying the club. It just seemed strange to me.
Yeah.
But I think what we sort of said is that, and I don't know about you, I suppose it's like when the success of that money, what that means to the football club, it's kind of like your morals go out the window.
It's not the fans' fault that somebody wants to buy their club, but at the same time, you have to always put up with it, you know what I mean? Like,
I think football fans are fickle, so you're probably right. Like, probably, City fans that have, spent the last decade winning titles, whatever, I guess a lot of them probably don't really care who their owners are, as long as, the titles are coming and they're being united or whatever. I would hope that, I don't certainly Thistle, if Saudi Arabia wanted to buy Thistle, I would hope there'd be a pushback, or maybe they wouldn't, I don't know. But I think there's like loads of really good models across, like in Scotland, like Motherwell and Hearts are both fan owned now.
Yep.
Both successful clubs. Even like Germany, like the biggest clubs there, they've got that as a 50% rule, so an individual can't own more than 50% of the club.
51,
Yeah, 51. There's like, and German clubs are hugely successful in Europe, so there's like good models there. You don't have to be owned by Saudi Arabia or whoever to
actually
be successful.
Have a club that you can be proud of.
I think for that model that you're talking about in Germany to get implemented, it meant like a decade of recession in their football.
Yeah.
And I think that there's especially in England, maybe not here, but especially in England, I think they would be bang against that. Like their national team and their club's European performances to go back to then go forward.
Yeah.
But that tends to be how change happens, isn't it? You need to take that wee step back so that you can sort of move forward with
I suppose it probably depends upon like that kind of massive like systemic change in football ownership in England, for example, would probably have to be driven by, I guess, the government. And I'd presume that the government that we have at the moment at UK level probably isn't that into like, the democratisation of the ownership of multi-million pound companies, I would imagine. So,
But we're seeing some really weird things like, Anfield's became a tourist attraction. Like Liverpool were for me, in England, one of the clubs and that sort of maybe top half of the English Premier League that have still retained that credibility as far as like the community element and their support and, you know, like the passion. But you know, fucking people on their phones and guys getting selfies with like Man United players, and you're like,
the stuff with the wee kids with the signs at the end of the game, like can I have
your
shot, sort of stuff,
right?
Get a life.
But it's becoming. But that, I think that's got to do with the price. Yeah. I don't think that's got to do with, you know, much else other than who can afford to go to the football. I'm sure if working class, even with some of the prices that you see, they're eye-watering. Middle class people in England, like, can't afford to go and see their local club.
Well, I lived in London for 4 or 5 years, and I used to just try and get to go to different games. But I wanted to go to a West Ham game because they were kind of like, you know, East End club, all the rest of it. But this was like 5 years ago. Ticket prices for West Ham were like, you know, £60-70, and you think that's a club that you would historically have had a very working class supporter base, and you get the charging to get 60-70, probably upwards of that for a ticket.
Who was it? Al? What was that like? You know, the guy on the TV with the fucking the
chemical.
No, like the wee handkerchief on his head. Alf Ramsey. He was like the stereotypical West Ham fan, wasn't he? Like back in the day. Like now, you know, we're looking at, you know, what we're saying, like probably like sort of Spice Boys. Do you know what I mean? Or like that are going and it's.
I mean, I was travelling down to England one time in not too distant past, and was within sort of shooting distance of quite a few of the like Liverpool, Manchester, and was like, right, Leicester, these types of places. I'll be like, maybe go and see somebody on the Saturday, and happened to look up Man City prices, and it was like £96.
Yeah.
And it was like a pure mid-table Premier League game, and you had to spend £20 joining their membership club to then be able to buy it, all that kind of thing. I was like, no.
What's the plan for the future for like how what? If you've got an idea of where it goes for here, because quite a lot of sort of like activism, especially if it's, you know, fundraising for season tickets, which has been amazing and went really well, it can then, you know, hit a plateau or even just disappear into the ether. So is there a contingency plan for the future?
So I think definitely for next year we want to try and replicate. So a couple of home games ago we did a food bank donation drive for Glasgow North West Food Bank. We definitely want to try and replicate that. Maybe not every home game, but certainly maybe monthly.
How successful was the food bank drive?
It was brilliant, so we had like half a ton of food donated, and well over £1,000 in cash as well. So it was brilliant. People were really good, and the food bank were like,
and was that just like the predominant or the sort of biggest food bank in the area? Was there like
Glasgow North West are so they've got like different they have like different food banks around North West of Glasgow. So they're part of the Trussell Trust, but we'd like to replicate that through like the whole next season, because realistically the kind of hardship that folk experience at the minute it's only going to increase.
Ongoing,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Announcements for the Bank of England last week looks like it might even get worse. Inflation getting into recession and stuff.
And it's a pretty sad state of affairs when football fans have to step up to respond to those kind of issues.
This is it, isn't it?
But this is like an ongoing thing that we always say, and it's hard to say that to people when you're celebrating the success that clearly like yourself and the organisation that you are having, to go, but why is this required?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's the same with food banks in general.
Ask that question, but
what's that? Sorry,
I think it's really important that he's asked that question while you're doing this type of thing.
Totally. But it's the same with like the existence of food banks in general. So like food banks are great in the sense that the people that are involved in them are compassionate, and they're coming together voluntarily to support others in their community, to keep their heads above water, to put food in their neighbours' tables. Essentially, that's a great thing. But the fact that they have to exist is an absolute moral disgrace, and it's a like damning indictment of pretty much the last 10 years of political decisions that have been made. So
and then some,
and then you add on the fact that football fans just shouldn't have to come together in this way, but we're seeing it happen all over the UK. So you were talking about Liverpool earlier, like Liverpool and Everton fans a couple of years ago came together to set up this things called fan support and food banks, and basically it was they basically have food bank donation drives at every Liverpool and Everton home match. It started off just a couple of guys, Ian Byrne and Dave Kelly. Ian Byrne's now a Labour MP. They set it up just in response to the kind of hardship they were seeing in their community. But it's grown, and they now provide like a quarter of all food bank donations in Liverpool, something like that. And
amazing.
On the one hand, it's amazing that they've done this, and that like the fans are so generous and that they can kind of get behind it and show that solidarity. But on the other hand, like, why the hell do football fans have to respond in that way? You know, it's a failure of government and politicians that has to happen.
So, I mean, I've seen something somewhere the other day saying that the top 10 poorest places in Europe, 9 of them are in the UK.
Yeah.
And they're all in the North England. I think one's in Wales, but the rest of it's all in the sort of North England, which, you know, as a Scottish person, it's nice to see that we're not getting mentioned in that, because that's the type of conversation that would normally be like littered with places in Scotland. Seems to have shifted a wee bit, and we're becoming. I don't know how they were measuring it. I really don't know, but it was just like a map, and it was showing you the top 10 richest places in Europe and the top 10 most impoverished, and 9 of them were in the UK. But the number one richest place in Europe is London.
Yeah.
So we've got the richest place in Europe, everything all concentrated to this one place, and then everything else is impoverished.
And I guess the kind of Northern English towns that you were talking about as being, you know, the poorest are probably also parts of the world with like big football fan bases, big football clubs.
Yeah.
And again, to me, that again highlights the kind of responsibility that clubs have to kind of respond to issues happening in their communities. Like, a lot of people talk about how, like, you know, you should never bring politics into football or to sport, which is just, if you're saying that, then you're either not affected by politics because you're too comfortable, or you just disagree with the politics and you're quite happy with the kind of levels of hardship that exist. Do you know what I mean? So
like a Tory Celtic fan sitting there saying that, stop bringing the politics.
Stop bringing politics in. Well, yeah, it's just you don't agree with the politics, or, you know, it means nothing to your life.
Go and support Rangers.
What point am I trying to make?
It's ridiculous, but politics and football almost have like that similar level or inspire that similar level of passion in people. You know what I mean? Like the fact that when they get mixed, you know, things actually happen that, you know, shouldn't need to, but can, or, you know, of massive benefit to it. I mean, I think when you look at that sort of Liverpool, sort of Greater Manchester, like Lancashire area, like the concentration of like football clubs like in those areas is insane. And I think we obviously have a very similar thing in Glasgow, where even just today we've talked Celtic, Rangers, Thistle, we've, you know, talked, you know, guys like St Roch's and at all the various other levels, but all very much within that sort of Glasgow area. So, you know, if we can talk about this big scale having an impact, we can still scale it down to be, you know, a very sort of successful thing in Glasgow. What have you got any? You were talking to other fan groups, other organisations and stuff like that. Is there anything like solid in the pipelines that you can talk about, or anything
in terms of working with other groups? Not currently, so I think we're trying to, I guess, work that out. So as I say, like, there's been a few
folk, quite early doors, to be fair.
Yeah, a few folk have got in touch, as I said, who are wanting, like, Scottish football fans from other clubs who are wanting to kind of try and replicate what we're doing and what others are doing. And there's already quite an established network of fans groups in England that are doing similar things as well. So at Liverpool that I mentioned, but also at like Man City, Man United, Southampton, West Ham, Southend as well. So there's loads of different fans groups that are doing similar things and that kind of see the need for clubs to respond to the kind of hardship that's happening in their communities, but also fans to kind of lead those responses as well. And that kind of, you have those kind of shared values around football and I suppose politics as well. So yeah, there are lots of folk doing this kind of thing across the UK. So I'm sure we will be trying to work with them as, you know, closely as we can do.
So one thing that's interesting, we've touched on it a few times, is like the politics of it all. And like, you know, you were saying that you're using quite very distinct like iconography on like the Twitter and kind of, you know, inverting them with the Thistle colours and all these other types of things. Like there was some pretty like explicit like anti-fascist like iconography used. Like when you're talking about the, you know, that like-mindedness, is there like an overt sort of political stance that, you know, Jags for Good are taking on certain things, or is it just that you want to do what you can for the community and see where you go for there?
I suppose probably more the latter, but I mean, like, I wouldn't see. So yeah, we put a graphic out. It was like no fascist, no racist, no bigot. It's just Jags.
Yeah,
and to me, that's like hardly even political. That's just, if you're a normal person, then you hate fascists. You know? It's just to be expected. But I think I suppose that it's more about values and being quite clear that as a fan base, Thistle fans stand for something a bit different.
Yeah,
I would hope. And that's more about saying that. So I wouldn't say we've got like a political stance, but also, you can't separate football and politics. So I guess everything's inherently political, I suppose, as well. But yeah, I think it's important for us to say those kind of things, as well as the daft graphics like Ian McCall, Che Guevara. although he looked more like a kind of middle-aged woman. But aye, no.
I mean, I seen he's getting somebody. I'm assuming somebody for the campaign was meeting him on the Twitter feed, so I couldn't have taken him.
We bumped into him in the pub.
Oh right,
that's
okay.
all that was.
So it wasn't like an official club friend.
No, we were in the pub after the game against Dunfermline when we'd done the food bank donation drive. A few of us having a few pints, and he walked in. So he didn't actually buy that T-shirt either, which is an absolute disgrace. But yeah, we got a wee snap.
There's
of
a
him.
gaffer straight under the bus.
I know. But yeah, we got a wee snap of him with the John Lambert
Right,
T-shirt.
I just assumed it was like an official thing. I was like, so he's cool, but you know.
I would, mate. If somebody turned me into Che Guevara and put it in a T-shirt, I'd be buzzing, mate.
Yeah,
I'd be absolutely buzzing.
I know. No,
so what else have you got planned? Is there anything else that's coming up?
Yeah, so we're hoping to organise a football tournament. So like Maryhill Integration Network, that who were predominantly been fundraising for the season tickets for, they're wanting to set up their own football team. So we're trying to sort of help them with that by arranging a big football tournament. We've been offered free facilities for that, free pitches, which is class. And there's like various things we're trying to build around that as well, like hopefully getting some of the Thistle players to run training sessions for the teams in advance, that kind of thing. So hopefully getting like teams from different predominantly like refugee organisations across Glasgow involved in that tournament, which would be cool.
Amazing.
There's one up at, a yearly one that another sort of group ultras organise up at Royston Roadway that's predominantly about migrant communities coming in playing like 5s and 7s and stuff, which I tend to go along to when I remember that it's on.
Yeah, when I lived in London, I supported a team called Dulwich Hamlet, who they're my local team based in South East London, and their fans do lots of stuff similar to this, really, to be honest. We're trying to rip them off a little bit. But lots of stuff like showing solidarity with refugees and like food bank stuff and all that. And as part of that, I went and played in I think it was sevens tournament in northern France with their supporters trust team, and it was this like fans football tournament, so teams from across Europe came, and the idea was to show solidarity with guys living in a refugee camp in Dunkirk in France. So if you remember the camp in Calais that was all over the papers at the time, there was another camp in Dunkirk just along the coast. There was this tournament called the Liberté Cup, and basically the idea was that a lot of guys from the camp would come and play, and like fans from over Europe would come and play in this tournament. And it was absolutely brilliant. Like it was really good because they dispersed everyone through different teams, so it wasn't like our team against so everyone was in different teams. But it was really good.
Cool idea, actually.
It was brilliant. It was so good
to actually like mingle and all that kind of stuff. Like,
and it was also really good in terms of like humanizing people. So I think often when it comes to particularly like refugees, people either are bigoted and horrible and vile towards refugees, or at the other end of the spectrum, that it's almost like dehumanizing. They're sort of depicted as like perfect angels and like perfect people that, you know, you almost kind of remove their human element if it's like they're it was really good in the football pitch because it showed that everybody can be an absolute prick when you're playing sevens. Like some of the tackles flying in,
human,
all that kind of thing. Like, you know, doesn't matter where you're from, but if you're like a greedy bastard that won't pass, you know, that kind of thing.
That dehumanization that you're talking about there's really prevalent in the sort of right-wing media as well, because
this Rwanda carry on.
They try and use the fact that there's like bad people amongst refugees as like a sort of way of discrediting the refugee, you know, taking people in. It's like,
and I think it sounds like there's a fair sort of demographic crossover between some of the guys you were talking about who are coming into the country on their own and, you know, participating in these sort of men's groups that you're talking about. It sounds from what we've heard about these types of Rwanda style plans for the UK government is that those are likely a demographic that the government is actively going to target. So having these initiatives that actually integrate, not just introduce, but integrate people to the community are absolutely vital, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that like the sort of narrative around refugee and asylum issues is in this country, which is fueled by the UK government and fueled by the right-wing media, is one of the like biggest stains on our society. Like the Rwanda thing it's almost like this dystopian nightmare that this has actually happened. Like, or even like, you know, the sort of ongoing attempts by the UK government and by the right-wing media to stoke up fears about folk crossing the Channel, for example, when it's a couple of folk a day who are incredibly desperate, fleeing war and trauma and all the rest of it.
Talking about setting gunboats off on them, is it like open public discourse, as if that is not the fucking weirdest thing you could ever imagine somebody saying? Is like, there's 4 people in a dinghy fighting for their life. Cool. Shoot at them, like fuck you. It's
like dangerous, it's shameful, it's just pretty vile to see. But when it's actual government policy, it's terrifying. So I think by extension, anything, even the smallest way that I think we can do to support people that are here is really important.
Absolutely. I think personally, we've spoke a lot about male suicide and men's mental health. I think this is the reason why we started the podcast.
Yep.
Quite a lot of that feels to me like a lack of community and a lack of purpose, and no really, like you say, isolation, and no having a way. And then you become not having a way to connect to other human beings, and then you become disillusioned, and then you start to believe this bullshit that gets fed to you through the media. So I think, like, for what I'm hearing for you, it sounds like, I mean, what did you say, 3,000 people in the group? Like,
I guess Thistle's fan base is around that,
right?
On a good day,
right?
But
so if you're getting people involved in community projects, it's not just the football. You know, going to the football is a good way to, like you're saying, you leave your stress behind, you go and you chat, you have a pint, you watch your football, you get out your head for a while. But the more that you can then engage with people and get them into stuff like this, then it's going to improve their well-being, but also the well-being of the people that you get along to play games of football, and make them realise that actually they're welcome here. You know what I mean?
I've concluded a lot of times that community is the answer to everything, because people do get disillusioned by these big ideas, these big problems, and look at them and think to themselves, I can't change that. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do I change the UK immigration policy? Like, how do I push, and you go, well, you can't, so what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, and I think whether it be mental health, whether it be, you know, immigration, refuge, whether it be, you know, just caring marine sort of, you know, communities and stuff like that, like that sense of community is, for me, like, the answer. You know what I mean? Like, and these are how we do it. Like, you go, don't worry about that big issue, let's take a look at this issue that's happening next door and see if we can fix that first. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's right. And I think the thing that you were saying about so basically Jags for Good, I think it's almost not really about Thistle at all. It's more just a way of, like, harnessing the fact that there's like 2,500, 3,000 folk that have this shared sense of identity, harnessing that and trying to, I suppose, channel it towards good things in whatever way we can, or whatever sort of small scale we can. And even, like, thinking about the work of lots of clubs like charitable trusts across Scotland, like Thistle's Charitable Trust, for example, does loads of stuff like with folk who experience mental health issues, with like refugees, with lots of kids from like low income backgrounds. And it's like, it's ostensibly about Thistle, about football, but it's also not really at all. It's more about providing support that folk need, but through the vehicle of football. So to me, that's a really powerful thing, and really important thing. For sure.
I think it's important as well for people to know that they don't need to be a Partick Thistle fan or a football fan to get
in general.
No, if they don't want pain,
I'd advise against it, to be honest. Like,
sorry, it was just hanging there. I had to swing at it.
But they don't need to be that to get involved. Like you're saying, it's something that's actually like that. You're using the vehicle of football to bring people in and get notoriety, but actually the work that you're doing is kind of like universally good. You know,
we actually had the Fairmont game a few weeks ago, Thistle Fairmont game a few weeks ago, and we did our food bank donation drive. Like, I'd been on Off the Ball like that lunchtime, like promoting what we were doing and promoting the food bank donation drive, and we had a couple of folk who weren't football fans, weren't Thistle fans, but had Video Scotland on in the car, who'd like they were in the car, drove to Tesco, bought a couple of bags of shopping and dropped off at ours outside the donation point, just because they heard about it, and not interested in the Thistle, not interested in football, but I just heard me talking nonsense and Off the Ball. So
just wanted to help,
and so I saw what we're trying to do. So that kind of thing was really cool. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't have to be a Thistle fan, don't have to be a football fan, but if you can see the value in showing solidarity with folk, then give us some money, support us.
If we were, we're obviously getting towards sort of wrapping up time, but like if we were sitting at home, you know, when this goes out in the next week or two, and you know, we're at a, you know, Scottish team or junior team and amateur, whatever it is, and think to themselves, do you know what? I fancy some of that. What kind of like headline sort of steps would you say to somebody to get like the ball rolling on this?
If they want to sort of do a similar thing.
Do something at their own local club or whatever.
Yeah, just engage with, I guess identify whether there's a need, whether there's, so for example, you know, we had this idea for raising money for season tickets, but then we thought like people actually want Thistle season tickets, engage with local charities to find out whether they've actually been interested in it. I just can't take it and just do it. Like this, Jags for Good's been really good so far because we've just asked people to do stuff and they've done it. Like we've asked the club to match every penny we raised, they've done it. We got in touch with one of the players and said like, can the team give us a donation? They did it. We asked a journalist to try and cover that story. She did it. Like just ask people to do things, and if the inherent idea behind what you're doing is good, then folk will do it. I don't know if that's a bit idealistic, but it's true. Like, basically, everybody we've asked to do something has just said yeah. So, like,
I get what you mean. Like, we had a very similar thing as we started this, and you were like going, maybe we can get this one into talk, because as we say, we talk about issues and what to, like, you know, share people's ideas and stuff like that. And the amount of times, I think we were like 6 months in, where I was like, we've not had anybody say no to us yet.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of weird, right? And you know what I mean? Like, it was literally just a case of saying to folk, you want to come in and like promote something that you're doing that's good for you. Like, ah, cool. You know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a lot of good people out there who literally just want to help. And I think that goes, I think that passes us by a lot.
Yeah, so even, you know, like I mentioned earlier on, we're trying to organise this football tournament, and we approached the venue we're hopefully hosting that, and said, like, we want to do this, like, could you give us a discount? And they were like, just have it for free, like, for the day. Or even, like, we got t-shirts made, and the guy that's making the t-shirts, just a little, like, guy on his own little business, he's given us a massive discount on them just because he saw what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's been quite reassuring in that way that people are actually, most people are quite decent. But I think that so if folk are wanting to do a similar thing, I would say, make a list of people that you can ask to do stuff and just ask them to do it.
Just get in their face and see how it works out.
Exactly, yeah.
Fair enough, man.
And also put out stupid graphics about defunding the old firm.
The stupid graphics have definitely been one of my highlights. So it has, like, I've enjoyed them immensely, and we'll continue to.
You've got to try and go viral. Somehow.
After last week's episode, we should get them minted into NFTs. Get them out there and raise some money. Aye. the great Thistle pump and dump. You know what I mean?
You scam people using Partick Thistle NFTs. That'd be a fucking a great idea.
Just missed out on the playoffs at Inverness just at the weekend there. How's the season went?
I think it's been all right. I mean, we're a newly promoted club. Obviously, we got unjustly relegated when the season got called in 2020 because of COVID. That was an injustice. Won the league last year, which was good. So, I mean, we're a newly promoted team, so getting in the playoffs was, I think, a good achievement. We weren't good enough to go up, so that was expected. But next year, pretty confident we've got a good side. A few good signings, I'm sure, in the summer. Ian McCaw's a good manager.
He is.
So
he's been there a couple of times, hasn't he?
This is his second spell.
Spell.
Yeah. And he loves the club.
Like,
and
long term. Lambie was, 2 or 3 stints as well, wasn't
Lambie was, I think, 3 plus a caretaker spell.
Right.
So he's a good manager, so I'm confident next year.
Something about the club keeps bringing these types of guys back, so best of luck to them for it in that respect.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see Thistle get up there again. I remember, like, getting into football, and there was the 3 years, you know, there. I had a weird habit of, like, going to Thistle games for some reason around about New Year. I remember one, and we went to get free tickets, and we were hungover, and it was brutal. And there was another one I remember sitting under a hole in the roof at Celtic Park where I was just sat in my own with this rain just dripping on me all the way through the game. I think we drew both their games, so we always get a tough fight. I usually start my football manager saves on Thistle as well, because you don't want to go Celtic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do have a soft spot.
I've got a soft spot for them as well. Like I said,
that's the classic. That's the classic thing that Celtic Rangers fans say, though. Got a soft spot. That's the classic Glasgow taxi driver thing as well.
Is it? I've got a soft spot for Thistle.
We'll come to the games then, yeah.
I'm going to email you my football manager save so that you can see it.
But that's it, isn't it? It's like, you go to the games then, if you know what I mean? If you can't afford to go to Celtic Park or Ibrox. I mean, their season ticket, but the last season tickets we bought for Parkhead were nearly 650 quid.
Sorry.
So they've got to be,
I think it's north of that now.
£750 now. It's usually a £50 uplift. I think they froze it for COVID for maybe 2 years. So you're probably talking about 700 quid for a season ticket. If you can't afford to support Celtic, you should just go.
Yeah.
Like,
Get involved.
As a wee boy, I love just going to the football. Like, just walking into a stadium and seeing the grass and just, you were like, whoa, like, this is class.
Yeah.
So it's just, and if it's affordable.
It's a nice wee stadium. I'm pretty sure I've seen some, like, Scotland under stuff there over the years. I don't think I ever went away with Celtic. I don't think that overlapped when I was gone, but I'm pretty sure I've seen some Scotland under 21s or something. Like,
we've had a few of them over the years.
Like, that were pretty decent. So it's a nice wee stadium.
Well, thanks very much, mate.
No, thanks very much.
It's been a really good conversation about, like, what seems to be like a really good cause, and you're doing really well.
Aye,
what you have done so far. I'm looking forward to hearing or keeping an eye out and seeing what you do in the future.
Aye, when we can promote or push you, just let us know, man.
Brilliant, thank you.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
I made a promise to whom will not to you. So stop the party.